Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest edition of the Cult Classic series, where we look at TV series throughout the decades that have left their mark in the entertainment industry and which have bordered the name of cult classic. Everything from comedy to action to adventure to music, dating from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. And when we think about comedy and we think of politics and maybe the niche of combining both together, one of the first pioneers of that sort of premise was a show called Spin City, which ran in from 1996 to 2000. It aired in cable TV all across the United States, Canada, and here in Europe as well. 145 episodes over 6 seasons. And one of the main founding members who was ever present of that show from episode 1 right up to its conclusion was Barry Bostwick, who played the mayor of New York City. He had two deputy mayors during his reign of office. One was Michael J. Fox, who played the role of Mike Flaherty, and the other one was Charlie Sheen, who played the role of Charlie Crawford. Barry, Spin City for you, when you think of projects that you were involved in and comedy and humor and writing material and things that probably bring a smile to your face. You've been involved in so many much throughout the years. Is Spin City one of those things that you can say, right, that was a time in my life where it was fun to go to work every day. I had fun reading the scripts, and in between takes, it was an awful lot of laughs. Or did you enjoy the whole atmosphere around Spin City?
Well, I thought Spin City was very unique for its time. One of the reasons is because we shot it in New York City and we were able to go out on the streets and shoot some scenes actually in the city of New York. And not a lot of sitcoms had that opportunity. And I jumped at the chance to work with Mike Fox originally, and he was generous enough to give me the part. And I think one of the reasons was because I was tall and he was short, and there was a lot of comedy to be mined there. Um, I had a great time. I moved from Los Angeles to New York for those years that we were shooting in New York because Mike lived in New York, and my wife and I, Sherry, we raised our two children from infancy out in the country of New York State, while I commuted in and out to the city to do the show, and it was a wonderful life. We had 5.5 acres and a waterfall, and the kids could go out in the woods, and it was, if it wasn't for Mike and it wasn't for Spin City, I don't know where the kids would have had that kind of opportunity to just be free. And certainly if we were in the city, they would be confined to some park somewhere. And so in terms of the actual show, Spin City, it was created by and for Mike Fox, and he was the driving force, and he sort of was basing his character on Stephanopoulos, who was a newsman and a columnist and a writer here in New York, and he had an image of this smart go-getter kind of guy, and a fixer, and Mike fixed it. He fixed all of my gaffes and everything that I did wrong as a character, as the mayor of New York, and he did it wonderfully, very physically. He was very funny, and but most of all, I think I learned so much from Mike because of his history with sitcoms, and his brilliance as a creator of that genre. I learned really the how to do it. I've done a lot of comedy on stage and this and that, but I learned a lot about the structure of a sitcom. I learned a lot about how to rehearse a sitcom. I learned to not take every moment so preciously, and I didn't and rehearse every moment and every bit and every move. He was very spontaneous. Mike wouldn't commit to much anything until he was in front of an audience, and he had an amazing memory. You could throw a script at it. You could throw pages of dialogue at him right before we shoot, and he would memorize it immediately. He had that kind of brain, and he was my boss. He was the executive producer. So therefore, I always felt that if I didn't get a laugh on a particular show, that I'd be fired. And I wasn't the only one in the cast who felt that way. Well, up until the end of the first year, every episode, we all thought, oh, well, that's it. We're out of here. The mayor can be recast easily because they would just have him assassinated or something, or he'd go crazy and somebody would replace him. And because it's an office staff, and if you know the show very well, I mean, the staff had a basis of 4 or 5 people, and then others sort of rotated in and out, particularly the women, because Mike was always wanting to have some kind of a relationship with one of the women in this cast, in the storyline, and so he was very insistent on that, I think, and it worked for him. It worked for him brilliantly.
Barry, the writing in terms of the script, the one-liners and the comedy and the sort of humor in terms of that, as an actor, in terms of what you can deliver in terms of on-screen performance, is dictated by the script and dictated by the words that come out of your mouth and such. People look back at TV series maybe like the 80s and people look like Married with Children, and the comedy and the humor and the one-liners and that. Spin City had that in gold in terms of, especially your character. He was the mayor. He came out with some fantastic sort of one-liners out of the instinct that would just make you sort of spring to life in terms of that smile on your face.
Yeah. Well, it was a written show. It wasn't a improvised show. So, the jokes and the relationships were worked to a fine point before we would shoot it, and then we would shoot it, and then they would come and change it between takes and add a new line, add a different, what do you call it, blow, the last line of the scene, which and everybody in the cast was so good that you could throw something new at anybody, and they would just run with it spontaneously on the spot. But in terms of what our input was to the actual writing, I would say not great. I mean, the writing was based and grew from the characters that they had originally created, and then we took it a next step. I think the mayor at one point in the beginning was supposed to be sort of, I think, mean-spirited, but my natural tendency was to be sort of obtuse and be sort of a guy from upstate, like from Connecticut, who was there was a mayor in New York called Mayor Lindsay, and I tried to combine Lindsay, who was this movie star looking very charismatic man, and then Ronald Reagan, who thought he was all of that, but was a fumbler and always had to have somebody sort of feeding him his lines, and so I tried to combine the two, and he came across, not a. I didn't want him to be stupid, because you don't become mayor of a major city if you're a real idiot, and I think he was just privileged. he was a privileged man, and so therefore he asked of the people around him to carry a lot of the burden of his job, and I think he just loved the fact that he was a star in the city, and didn't always make the most prudent and right choices, and that's where Mike came in, and where everybody else on the staff would come in to, fix his gaffes. And I really tried every fifth or sixth episode to have the character do something smart, do something that you didn't say, or that you did say he could actually run a city. And they accommodated me in that as often as they could. But it. I like the fact that he was just slightly not there, and that's what I like doing. I like playing those characters that are just off center, off base, and listening to a whole different drummer, as they say.
And Barry, there's one poignant scene in terms of your character where a serious sort of storyline where the whole marriage proposal, where you're in the sort of restaurant and you're proposing that time, and you're looking for that one word to come out of her mouth, the yes, but you get the sort of wrong answer. And there's a scene at the end where I think there's a Chinese girl, a Japanese girl, and you just go over and just pop the wedding ring into her sort of the basket after not giving her the few $1,000 bills at the start, sort of thing. And that really showed up your character, the up and down sort of nature of him.
Say that last part again. I remember throwing that ring in there, but that was again, that was him just the guy was rich, I mean, he didn't it didn't have the meaning to him that it would have to a normal human being. And I don't remember the incident that you're talking about too well, other than the fact that, did I, as a character, realize I was putting this ring in there, or was it just a mistake?
That's what I was just sort of wondering. Are you realizing that you were putting the ring? Was it a symbol, sort of a value sort of thing, where that you're putting your broken heart into this, the getting rid of it into the palms of this young girl after not giving her the money at the begin with? Was this a way of getting rid of your sort of the character's emotions, his emotions of getting rejected maybe for the first time?
Well, you know more about him than I do. I mean, we did 120 episodes, and I can't remember much of any of them until somebody reminds me about something that, I remember some of the big moves. I remember us jumping off the pier into the Hudson River. I remember things like that because they were, so dramatic and a big splash, so to speak, but the little moments, no, they've left me after all these years.
And Barry, what was it like when Michael decided? Obviously, things were catching up with him at that stage. In terms of we all know his condition. It was that stage after the few seasons, and he probably felt that he wanted, for his own health and safety, to take a step back and take away from it. And the sort of production of Spin City moved from New York back to Los Angeles. Charlie Sheen came on board. Were you a bit nervous at that time when all that sort of upheaval and sort of change happened? Were you a bit skeptical, like this might be the last season, this might be a scenario that might work, people might take to Charlie, they mightn't take to him, and obviously Michael J. Fox would have the same effect, this sort of guy that was in every scene not being there anymore?
Well, I think we all thought it was over. I mean, because that's what happens in sitcoms. When the star leaves, usually the sitcom stops. And but I think they had so much invested in this. DreamWorks and Mike and Gary David Goldberg, who was producer of it, also. that I think they knew that they had a strong enough supporting cast that they would make an attempt at coming up with somebody who had a history and would bring to the part something that was unique to them, and they wouldn't have to sort of reinvent that actor, human being life to make him controversial. And I thought it was a brilliant choice with Charlie, because he brings to it an awful lot of baggage. Even back then he did, and a simplicity. And he has always said that he sort of learned how to do a sitcom by doing it with us, just like I learned an awful lot about it by doing it with Mike. And he was such a team player, and was because he also wasn't one of the producers, so therefore we all could relax a little bit and just sort of help him along and have fun with him, which we did. But when Mike announced that he was ill, we were all just shaken, and it was a very critical, sad day for us all, and not just because of our potential employment, but because we love Mike so much, and it was such a shock that such a young man would have Parkinson's disease, and so he, and I think he bowed out in a very graceful and meaningful way. I think our last couple of episodes with him were very moving and funny, and then he sort of snuck back in for the first 2 or 3 episodes with Charlie, just to sort of make the transition as smooth and as possible. And I think by the time Mike stopped coming and being, in the show, once Charlie was in the show, I think Charlie was very relieved that now he had the reins, and he wasn't people weren't looking over his shoulder, named Michael J. Fox.
And do you think if it was anybody else but Charlie Sheen, would it have survived?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I never thought about it. Charlie was so perfect, and the right age and the right attitudes, and I never heard any other names brought up when they said, "Oh, by the way, we are going to go forward, and we've got Charlie Sheen." The whole cast was delighted, not only to have employment, but also to look forward to continuing the story and taking a slight right turn with Charlie. Mike was very physical, and he liked the physical humor, and Charlie was a little more heady and a bit more just sort of sarcastic and a ladies' man,
And Barry, what was it like working with Richard Kind? Because he probably was the breakout star of the show. He was in 145 episodes. And his character really was comedy gold. We all know the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sort of scene in terms of that, what he did. And in terms of his character and his interactions with your character, there almost felt like there was a good sort of connection, so a sort of good vibe whenever you and Richard were in a scene together.
Well, Richard is a total original. I mean, if you were in show business here or anywhere, you would see on the casting sheet, it's a Richard Kind type, and I've always thought to myself, well, why don't they just get Richard Kind? And most of the time they do, because he has a total original take on comedy, and he's larger than life, and I had such respect for him for his timing and his sort of seriousness, that he took his character very serious, and to me that was very funny, because I was trying to take my character very serious. So probably that's why we meshed together, because none of us we weren't really commenting too much on who we were and how we behaved in the office. And but Richard Kind was and is one of the most original human beings in the world, and hysterical, and I love him dearly.
And I suppose, Barry, for you, in terms of the moment, what's it been like, the sort of COVID sort of world? I suppose it's beginning to open up now in terms of acting again, in terms of the States, in terms of California, Los Angeles. Are you involved in any sort of productions, maybe guest appearances in TV series, episodes, maybe movies that are coming out later on in the year or into next year that you would like to mention?
Yeah. Well, I just finished a movie called Single All the Way for Netflix, which is a Christmas movie that'll be out soon. I did the pilot episode of a new Disney show called Doogie Kamala Aloha,
Okay.
based on the Doogie Howser, sort
Yeah.
of moniker, and that premiered last night, and it got very good reviews, and I think it's a sweet, charming show. I just finished another movie called Lady Parts. That I've got a film called Outlaw Johnny Black that will be out soon. And I just and right now we're talking about doing a tour on Golden Pond with Leslie Ann Warren, her and I playing the leads here in the United States, probably sometime before next summer. Directed by Ernest Thompson, the writer of the play, and who also got an Academy Award for it, and he's going to direct it, and it should be a first-class, wonderful experience for everybody. And we'll just we'll do some touring around the United States to some of the places that still want to see theater.
And Barry, the sort of two penultimate questions for you. And first of all, this question I asked Alexander Chaplin yesterday, so I'm going to ask you this one. It's probably rack your brain, probably this one, you probably might have to think about it. Let's pretend there was a Spin City encyclopedia, a dictionary as such, and they put your character, the mayor, into that encyclopedia, and they left two blank sentences underneath. Take it a synopsis as such. And the talent agent got onto your representatives, and and said, "Listen, we want Barry Bostwick to write those two sentences in the encyclopedia for the mayor of Spin City." What would you like those two sentences to read? To sum him up.
I'm privileged. I think the man is privileged. He's egocentric. He is. Sometimes insensitive to other people's feelings, and then he'll do a complete turnaround and fall in love with some of the most beautiful women in show business. Farrah Fawcett and I had an affair in the script for 3 episodes, and I cherished every moment of it. That's probably more than 2 sentences, but it
had to come out.
yeah.
And Barry, lastly, from me to you, is there any specific story that you would like to share to us from your time on Spin City? Maybe an interaction with one of the actors, or maybe something offset, or some sort of funny moment, or a blooper, or something totally unique to you that you still sort of remember even to this day, that brings a smile to your face?
Well, I would say it would be the time that Mike and I jumped off the pier into the Hudson River, and on a dare. I think we lost a bet or something, and so we had to do it. And I remember they went out to look at the height of the water from the pier, and they thought, oh, well, this is decent. It's okay. We can do it. And then when we finally went out there to shoot it, the tide was out, and I swear to God, it looked like we were jumping off the Empire State Building. It was so far down, and I had just gotten over prostate cancer, and I think I was still sort of tethered to my bag, and Mike was having some issues with his health that nobody really knew about. But we both were hesitant, but we did it. It was a leap for life. And I thought, okay, they had scuba divers in the water and everything was fine. We did it. And then we came up and Mike said, let's do it again. And I just wanted to run. I didn't want to jump in that water again. I was feeling it probably as bad as he was, and I couldn't let anybody really know what my issue was, as he wasn't telling anybody about his issue. But I think it's one of the moments in the series that stands out as something that was very special to Mike and I, and I'll still hate him for the fact that he made me jump in the Hudson River twice without tetanus shots.
Barry, on that note, Barry Bostwick, 145 episodes, the mayor in Spin City, from day one to day nine, as the saying goes. 6 seasons, there from the beginning, there to the end. Comedy gold. In terms of the performance as well. Hopefully, please God, we'll see Spin City in terms of a rebooted version and see more of it on our screens. It definitely was a cult classic documentary. It was ahead of its time for when it came out in the 90s, and it brought, as we said, a subtle and humoristic viewpoint towards political sort of comedy, as the saying goes. Barry Bostwick, an absolute pleasure. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. It's great to see that you still have projects coming out to this day and doing so well. We do advise our audience and listeners to do check out Barry's current projects at the moment. And Barry,
you can also check out my website, barrybostwick.com.
Okay.
I've got, I make things. I make clocks and I make all kinds of jewelry and stuff that are Rocky Horror Picture Show oriented. So I've got the whole fan base for Rocky Horror Picture Show loves the stuff that's on barrybostwick.com.
Do indeed. So there you have it, folks. Check out barrybostwick.com. But from the mayor of Spin City, good day to you, sir. Good night here from Ireland, and
thank
we
you.
wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
And you too, Jim. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers. Take care, Barry.